world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. The dim glow of the television barely lit the living room as I sat in my chair, gripping a glass of whiskey so tightly my knuckles turned white. The ice clinked against the sides, a soft, almost taunting sound. My wife, Ava, was upstairs, probably in bed, pretending everything was fine. But it wasn't. Something had changed. At first, it was subtle. A longer work schedule, a distant look in her eyes, an absent-minded smile when she stared at her phone. Then came the name, Kevin. At first, he was just a co-worker, someone she casually mentioned in passing. But soon, his name was in every conversation. Kevin is so great at leading the team. Kevin planned the most amazing work event. Kevin said the funniest thing today. Every mention of his name chipped away at my peace. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. But then the real changes started. She began dressing up more than usual, wearing perfume I hadn't smelled on her in years. She laughed at her phone screen late at night, turning away when I tried to see what was so funny. And then came the biggest red flag. One night, she returned home after a work event, her cheeks flushed, her eyes sparkling with a light I hadn't seen in years. She smelled like expensive alcohol and excitement. Had a great night. I had asked, my voice careful, my grip on my whiskey glass firm. Kevin is just such a great guy. He really knows how to bring a team together, she had said, oblivious to the fire burning inside me. I had nodded, swallowed my jealousy, and let it go. But I shouldn't have. I should have known that this was just the beginning. A few weeks later, she invited Kevin over for dinner. She wanted me to meet him. The great Kevin. I agreed, but when the night came, Kevin canceled at the last minute. Ava's disappointment was evident. She tried to hide it, but I saw the way her fingers flew across her phone screen, the way she smiled at whatever reply he sent her. The next time she went out, she didn't bother telling me where. That night, I waited. I checked the time. Midnight passed. Then 1 a.m. Then 2 a.m. When she finally stumbled in at nearly 3 in the morning, she reeked of liquor and perfume. Where were you? I asked, my voice controlled but sharp. Work ran late, she slurred, kicking off her heels. Work? At a bar. She hesitated. We just grab a few drinks after, she shrugged, as if it were nothing. With Kevin. She stiffened for half a second. With the team. But I knew she was lying. The final straw came on a Saturday evening. She waltzed downstairs, dressed to the nines, in a dress I hadn't seen her wear in years. Her hair was flawless, her lips painted a shade of red that had once been meant for me. Kevin's waiting in the car. Let's go, she said, casually checking her lipstick in the mirror. Go where? I asked, my voice dangerously low. To a wild night, she grinned, as if it were funny. She hadn't invited me. She hadn't even mentioned this plan. And Kevin, he was waiting outside her house. You're going out with another man on a Saturday night, and didn't think to tell me. My voice was steel. She rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic, Lucas. He's just a friend. A friend. I took a slow, measured step toward her. Then why do I feel like you're cheating on me? She sighed, irritated. You're overreacting, as usual. And then she opened the door, stepped out without hesitation, and climbed into Kevin's car. She didn't look back. She had chosen him. She thought this was a game. She had no idea what she had just done. I stood in the darkened living room, my fists clenched so tightly my nails bit into my palms. The headlights of Kevin's car disappeared down the street, taking my wife with them. The woman who had stood before me just minutes ago wasn't the woman I had married. No, she was someone else entirely, someone who no longer cared about the life we had built, someone who thought she could walk all over me and I would just sit back and take it. But she was wrong. She had no idea who she had just betrayed. My mind was already working through the next steps. This wasn't just about heartbreak. This wasn't about feeling sorry for myself. No, this was war. And I was going to win. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app. The joint account, the one where all our money sat, was still intact for now. But not for long. With swift, precise movements, I initiated the transfer, emptying every last cent into a separate account that only I controlled. Ava had never cared to manage our finances. She had always trusted me to take care of everything. Big mistake. Then, I checked the GPS tracker I had installed on her car 3 days ago, when my suspicions had been confirmed. I had watched her lies pile up, seen the way she laughed at her phone late at night. I knew where she was going. I knew who she was meeting. And now, I had the proof I needed. Kevin had booked them a hotel, a luxurious weekend getaway, paid for with a credit card we both shared. She hadn't even bothered to be discreet. She thought she had me wrapped around her little finger, thought I would be waiting at home like some pathetic fool, drinking myself into oblivion while she played house with another man. She thought wrong. I opened another app on my phone, our home security system. I had installed hidden cameras in our house, something Ava hadn't noticed. I tapped through the footage, going back to last night when she had slinked into our bedroom at 3 a.m., sneaking her phone under the covers. The video captured her whispering sweet nothings to Kevin, giggling like a schoolgirl. "I can't wait for this weekend, babe," she had murmured. "It's going to be unforgettable." Unforgettable, indeed. I spent the next few hours dismantling our life piece by piece. I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to erase myself from this marriage, leaving her with nothing. First, I called my lawyer. I had anticipated this moment, preparing in advance, and now, it was time to pull the trigger. I had the papers ready: divorce, asset liquidation, financial withdrawal, all in motion. By the time she returned from her dirty little weekend getaway, she would come home to a nightmare. Then I quit my job. I had been working remotely for a major firm, meaning my resignation was swift and effective. Ava would expect my paycheck to come at the end of the month. It wouldn't. I sold her second car, the one she rarely used but expected to be there when she needed it. A private buyer had already wired me the money, and by morning, it would be gone. Next, I changed the locks on the house. Then I packed. I took my clothes, my personal belongings, my important documents, everything that belonged to me. I even took the wedding album. She didn't deserve to keep a single reminder of what we had once shared. By the time I was finished, the house was nearly empty. The only things left were her clothes, her makeup, and the cold reality of her choices. And then, I made one final move. I left a letter. I didn't rant. I didn't beg. I simply wrote, "I hope he was worth it." And then I was gone. The morning sunlight was too bright, too harsh. Ava groaned as she rolled over in the hotel bed, stretching her arms lazily as Kevin snored beside her. Her head pounded from the night before, a mixture of expensive champagne and reckless abandon. She turned, glancing at Kevin's sleeping form. For weeks, she had convinced herself that this was real, that this wasn't just a fling, that Kevin was different. He made her feel alive. Lucas had always been so stable, so predictable. But Kevin, he was exciting, fun. He knew how to make her feel wanted. And yet, as she stared at Kevin, something didn't feel right. She reached for her phone, checking for messages from Lucas. Nothing. A small part of her expected an angry text, a demand to know where she had been. But there was nothing. Not a missed call, not a single word. Her stomach twisted. She clicked on their banking app, and the moment she saw the zero balance, her breath caught at her throat. Her hands trembled as she checked their savings. Gone. Her emergency fund. Gone. The credit cards. Frozen. Panic set in. She threw the covers off and sat up abruptly, her pulse hammering in her ears. "No, no, no," she whispered, trying to process what was happening. She called Lucas. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. Something was wrong. She grabbed her dress from the floor, slipping it on hastily before shaking Kevin awake. "We need to go. Now." Kevin groaned, rubbing his eyes. "What the hell, Ava? It's too early. Get up," she snapped, shoving him. Something in her voice must have alarmed him because he sat up, frowning. "What's going on?" She didn't answer. She was already pulling on her shoes, her heart slamming against her ribs. Something was very, very wrong. Ava's heels clicked furiously against the pavement as she practically ran into the house. But the moment she stepped inside, she froze. It was empty. Not just messy. Not just half-packed. Completely. Fucking empty. The walls were bare. The furniture was gone. The shelves were stripped. The fridge was unplugged. The pantry barren. It was as if Lucas had never existed. Her breath hitched as she stumbled forward, heart pounding in her chest. "Lucas," she called, her voice cracking. Silence. Frantically, she ran upstairs, throwing open the closet doors. His clothes were gone. His shoes. His cologne. Everything. She rushed to the bathroom. Empty. The garage. Empty. The only thing left was an envelope sitting on the kitchen counter. With shaking hands, she picked it up, her vision blurring. She tore it open, and as she read the 3 simple words, her knees buckled. I hope he was worth it. Her hands trembled violently as the full weight of what had happened crashed down on her. Lucas hadn't just left. He had erased her, destroyed her life, took everything, and he wasn't coming back. Ava's fingers trembled as she gripped the note, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. She stumbled to the living room, her heels echoing against the emptiness. She turned in circles, as if expecting Lucas to jump out and yell that it was all a joke. But there was nothing, not a single sign of the life she had once taken for granted. Her phone slipped from her fingers, landing on the hardwood floor with a dull thud. Then the real panic set in. She sprinted to her purse, yanking out her wallet. She pulled out her bank cards and tried to make a transfer to her personal account. Declined. Her jaw clenched. She tried again. Declined. Every account was frozen. Her vision blurred as she scrolled through their joint account history, her breath catching in her throat as she saw the transactions. Lucas had drained everything. The mortgage was overdue. The credit card payments were months behind. No, she muttered, clicking through page after page of financial destruction. Lucas hadn't just left. He had made sure she had nothing left to stand on. She dialed Lucas's number again, straight to voicemail. She called again, and again. Nothing. With shaky hands, she scrolled through her contacts and clicked on Kevin's number. It rang. She swallowed hard, her heart hammering against her ribs. Pick up. Please pick up. Finally, the call connected. Hey, babe. Kevin's voice was groggy, half asleep. What's up? Relief washed over her. He'll help. He has to help. Kevin, I need you to come over. Right now. Her voice wavered, raw with emotion. There was a long pause. Oh, why? I just woke up. Lucas is gone. He took everything. I don't have access to my money, and I think the house is. Kevin sighed heavily. Ava, it's too early for this drama. I'll call you later. Okay. No, she snapped. Kevin, I need you. I have nowhere else to go. Another pause. This time longer. Then, in a tone so cold it sent a chill through her spine, Kevin said, Look, Ava, I didn't sign up for this. If your husband left you broke, that's your problem, not mine. Her stomach twisted violently. Kevin, what are you saying? I'm saying you need to figure this out on your own. Click. The call disconnected. She stared at her screen in horror. Kevin had abandoned her. Just like that. She sank onto the floor, the weight of her new reality pressing down on her like an unbearable force. Lucas was gone. Kevin had used her and tossed her aside the moment she became inconvenient. And now, she was truly, completely alone. Ava grabbed her keys, stumbling outside, only to stop dead in her tracks. The driveway was empty. Her car, gone. Ava rushed inside, grabbing her phone and dialing the police. My car was stolen, she blurted out, her voice shrill with panic. The officer on the other end sighed. Ma'am, your vehicle wasn't stolen. It was repossessed. The loan payment stopped 3 months ago. Her blood ran cold. 3 months? But then it hit her. Lucas. He had stopped paying for everything. While she had been sneaking around with Kevin, Lucas had been planning his escape. And now she had nothing. No home. No money. No car. No one. She collapsed onto the couch, the only piece of furniture left in the house, her body shaking uncontrollably. The silence of the house was deafening. The walls that had once witnessed their laughter, their love, their dreams, now only echoed with the consequences of her betrayal. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she cried. 3 days later, the final blow came. A bright red paper was taped to the front door, the words screaming at her. Foreclosure notice. Vacate within 30 days. Ava ripped it off, her hands trembling. This house, her home, was being taken from her. Lucas had planned it all. He had built her world, and then he had burned it to the ground. And now, she was standing in the ashes, alone. While Ava's life was falling apart, Lucas's was just beginning. He had relocated to a coastal town, far away from the wreckage of his past. He had always loved working with his hands, and now he had the chance to start over, building custom furniture, creating something real. Unlike his marriage, every morning, He woke up with the ocean breeze on his skin, free from the lies, free from the betrayal. And for the first time in years, he was happy. Ava spent the next few weeks desperately searching for a way out. She applied for jobs, but her resume, once impressive, was now unremarkable. She reached out to old friends, but they had heard the rumors. Lucas had told everyone. She had been exposed, and no one wanted to help her. The day she was finally evicted, she packed her belongings into 2 suitcases and checked into the cheapest motel she could find. The once pristine woman who had laughed at her husband's devotion was now sleeping in a room with stained walls and a flickering light. And the worst part, she had done this to herself. Months passed. Ava barely survived on the pennies she made working a local diner. One night, after her shift, she sat alone in her motel room and picked up her phone. For the first time in months, she called Lucas. It went straight to voicemail. She took a deep breath and left a message. Lucas, I know you probably hate me, and I don't blame you, but please just talk to me. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know I'm sorry. Her voice broke. I lost everything, Lucas, and I know I deserve it. But if you ever wanted to talk, I'd give anything just to hear your voice again. She hung up, and she waited. For days. For weeks. But the call never came. Lucas had moved on. And for Ava, there was nothing left but regret. Ava sat in her dingy motel room, the air stale and suffocating. The once pristine woman who had worn designer dresses and dined at the finest restaurants was now staring at the cracked ceiling, the harsh flickering light above her doing nothing to soften the reality of her downfall. Her hand shook as she checked her phone for the 100th time. Still nothing. Lucas hadn't responded, hadn't acknowledged her message, hadn't given her the smallest bit of closure. A lump formed in her throat as she swallowed down the bitter taste of regret. She had expected rage, hatred, a response filled with venom, anything to remind her that she still existed in his world. But this silence was worse, because it meant he had erased her completely. She wasn't even worthy of his anger, and that realization shattered her more than anything else ever could. Ava forced herself out of bed the next morning, slipping into the only pair of decent shoes she had left. The soles were worn, the heels scuffed. Nothing like the polished stilettos she used to wear when she walked into high-end restaurants with her head held high. Now, she walked into a dingy diner, her head bowed low. She tied her apron around her waist and picked up a tray, forcing a smile as she approached a table full of loud customers. "What can I get for you?" she asked, her voice hollow. A man barely looked up at her. "Coffee. Black." A woman snapped her gum. "Pancakes. Extra syrup. And make it quick." Ava nodded and turned toward the kitchen, her heart hammering in her chest as she realized how far she had fallen. This was her life now, scraping by for tips, smiling at people who barely acknowledged her, working double shifts to afford a motel room with stained sheets and a bathroom that smelled like mildew. And the worst part, it wasn't temporary. There was no escape. She had built her own prison brick by brick, choice by choice. And Lucas was never coming to save her. Weeks turned into months. Ava learned how to survive on tips, how to stretch $1 in ways she never thought possible. But no matter how much time passed, she still found herself reaching for her phone, still staring at the last voicemail she had left for Lucas, still waiting. One evening, as she walked home from her shift, she passed by a small coffee shop with a warm glow spilling from the windows. She slowed her pace, something drawing her toward the laughter inside. And that's when she saw him. Lucas, sitting by the window, sipping coffee. And he wasn't alone. A woman sat across from him, her smile soft and affectionate, her fingers tracing small circles on the table between them. Lucas leaned in slightly, chuckling at something she said. Ava's breath caught in her throat. Her world stopped. For months, she had imagined Lucas being just as broken as she was. She had convinced herself that maybe, asterisk asterisk, just maybe, asterisk asterisk, he was hurting too. That maybe, one day he would miss her. But looking at him now, happy, relaxed, free, she realized the truth. Lucas hadn't just moved on. He had forgotten her. And that was the moment Ava knew. She had truly lost him forever. She wanted to turn away, wanted to keep walking, to bury herself in the shadows where she belonged. But she couldn't. Her feet felt like they were cemented to the sidewalk. So she stood there, watching as Lucas laughed, a laugh she hadn't heard in years. The woman across from him leaned forward, resting a hand on his, her eyes warm. And Lucas? He didn't pull away. Ava's throat burned, her heart pounding against her ribs like a desperate plea. She wanted to scream, wanted to run inside, shake him, tell him that this wasn't fair, that she was the one who was supposed to be sitting across from him, that she was the one he should be smiling at. But deep down she knew she had destroyed that future, with every lie, every betrayal, every night spent with Kevin, believing she could have both worlds. Now, she had nothing. And Lucas? He had everything. Ava finally forced herself to turn away. She walked back to the motel, her head low, her steps heavy. She had lost the only man who had ever truly loved her. And the saddest part, she knew she would never find another like him. Lucas wasn't coming back. Kevin had discarded her like trash. Her family had turned their backs. Her friends had disappeared. And this was her life now. Alone, forgotten, trapped in a loop of regret that would never end. Lucas stepped out of the coffee shop, the evening breeze cool against his skin, his fingers intertwined with his new girlfriend's, her warmth familiar and comforting. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, sensing something in his expression. Lucas glanced down the street, a flicker of movement catching his eye. Ava. She was walking away, shoulders hunched, her pace slow. For a brief moment, something stirred in his chest. Memories. Shadows of the past. But then, it passed. Because Ava was nothing more than a lesson learned. A chapter he had closed. A ghost from a life he no longer cared about. He turned back to the woman beside him, squeezing her hand gently. "Yeah," he said, smiling. "I'm better than ever." And as he walked into his future, Ava faded into the background. Just another regret that no longer mattered. The story was over. And Lucas had won.